The birthday party jitters. The scent of honeysuckle and grilling meat hung heavy in the air as Mark navigated the miller's sprawling backyard. Fairy lights twinkled, strung haphazardly between the oak trees, casting a warm, forgiving glow on the boisterous crowd. He smoothed down his borrowed shirt, a nervous habit Sarah had already teased him about relentlessly. He spotted her near the makeshift dance floor, a vision in a flowing sundress, her laughter ringing out above the music. "Hey, birthday girl," he said, pulling her into a hug. Her skin smelled of vanilla and sunshine, a comforting contrast to the knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. "You look amazing." Sarah beamed, her eyes sparkling. "Took you long enough. I was starting to think you'd chicken out." She squeezed his hand. "Relax, it's just my family. They're mostly harmless." He managed a weak smile. "That's what I'm afraid of." A woman with Sarah's eyes, but sharper, and a cascade of auburn hair that looked suspiciously expensive, detached herself from a group near the barbecue. "Sarah darling, who's this handsome young man?" "Mom, this is Mark." "Mark, this is my mom, Susan." Susan's smile was dazzling, almost predatory. She extended a hand, her nails long and lacquered a vibrant scarlet. "So nice to finally meet you, Mark. Sarah's told me so much about you." Her grip was surprisingly firm. "It's a pleasure to meet you too, Mrs. Miller." "Susan, please. Mrs. Miller makes me sound ancient." She chuckled, a low, throaty sound that sent a shiver down Mark's spine. "So, Mark, what do you do?" He launched into his practiced explanation of his graphic design work, stumbling slightly over the technical jargon. Susan listened intently, her gaze unwavering, making him feel both flattered and vaguely uneasy. "Fascinating," she said when he'd finished. "Sarah certainly has a knack for finding interesting people. Although," she added, her eyes twinkling mischievously, "I do wish there were two of her to go around. One Sarah simply isn't enough to brighten everyone's day." Mark, flustered, laughed nervously. "I'm sure everyone feels that way." He caught himself. "About Sarah, I mean." Susan's smile widened, and she leaned closer, her perfume, a heady mix of jasmine and something musky, filling his senses. "What if there was," she murmured, her gaze lingering on his face. "Another version, perhaps, with a slightly different flavor?" He didn't know how to respond. He glanced at Sarah, who was deep in conversation with a group of friends, oblivious to the subtle, charged exchange unfolding beside her. The contrast between Sarah's open, trusting face and her mother's knowing smile was jarring. "Mom, don't scare him off," Sarah said, finally turning back to them. She looped her arm through Mark's. "He's easily intimidated by beautiful women." Susan laughed, a bright, brittle sound. "Just teasing, darling. Mark seems perfectly capable of handling himself." She patted Mark's arm, her touch lingering a fraction too long. "Enjoy the party, you two. I'll leave you to it." As Susan walked away, her hips swaying slightly, Mark felt a wave of conflicting emotions. He was undeniably flattered by her attention, yet a sense of unease settled deep in his gut. There was something unsettling about the way Susan looked at him, a hunger that made him profoundly uncomfortable. He watched Sarah laughing with her friends, her face radiant in the soft light. He loved her kindness, her unwavering belief in the good in people. But standing here, in the middle of her birthday party, surrounded by her family and friends, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of something precarious, something he didn't fully understand. Something that could shatter the fragile happiness he had found with Sarah. A dangerous compliment. The house throbbed with a bassline that vibrated through Mark, even as he stood by the groaning buffet table. He edged through the throng, lukewarm beer sloshing in his unsteady grasp. Susan, Sarah's mother, shimmered across the room, a vision in an emerald gown that scattered light with each gesture. Engaged in animated conversation, her head tilted back, she released a peal of laughter that sent waves of auburn hair dancing down her back. A nervous tremor ran through Mark. Their encounters that evening had been few, and each left him subtly off-kilter. He sensed a potent energy in her attention, a playful challenge woven into her smile that eluded him. He lingered by the chips, feigning rapt interest in the vegetable platter, until Susan gracefully broke from her discussion and turned his way. "Enjoying yourself, Mark?" she inquired, her voice a silken thread cutting through the din. "Yeah, great party," he responded, perhaps a touch too eagerly. "Sarah always throws the best." A low, resonant chuckle escaped Susan's lips, sending a prickle across his skin. "Indeed she does. A trait inherited, naturally." Her wink sent his pulse skittering. He took a substantial swallow of his beer, hoping for a calming effect. "She's remarkable," he managed, emboldened by the alcohol's loosening grip. "You must be so proud." Susan moved closer, her perfume, a rich blend of jasmine entwined with something dark and spicy, enveloping him. "I am," she murmured, her gaze locked on his. "She's a truly exceptional girl." A surge of confidence coursed through him, fueled by the beer. He grinned, perhaps a bit too broadly, a bit too foolishly. "You know, sometimes I wish there were two Sarahs. Then I wouldn't have to agonize over dividing my attention." The words tumbled out before he could retract them, an awkward, ill-conceived jest hanging in the air like damp gunpowder. He steeled himself for a polite, dismissive response. Instead, Susan's eyes danced with amusement. Stepping closer, her arm grazed his. "And what if," she breathed, her voice a mere caress, "there was?" Mark's breath hitched. He stared, his mind a whirlwind. The music seemed to recede, the cacophony of the party fading into a distant drone. He could feel the subtle heat emanating from her, the weight of her interest. "What do you mean?" he croaked, his voice barely audible. Susan's smile widened, a bright flash of teeth against the crimson stain of her lips. "What if there existed someone else who could offer what you crave? Someone who truly understands you, cherishes you, someone a little more seasoned?" A wave of giddiness threatened to overwhelm him. He knew he should retreat, should dismiss it with a laugh, should gently remind her that he was dating her daughter. But he remained rooted, ensnared in her captivating spell. The seductive proposition hung suspended between them, a dangerous allure shimmering in the party's hazy glow. Subtle shifts. The bass resonated, a throbbing undercurrent that vibrated through Sarah, settling in her sternum. The living room swam before her, a mosaic of faces caught in the erratic flashes of Emily's strobe lights. Mark stood near the improvised bar, laughter tilting his head back, a sight that usually sparked a warm feeling. But then she spotted her mother. Susan was angled towards him, one hand a casual anchor on his forearm as she spoke. Though the music obscured their words, Susan's smile shone brightly, almost intensely, and Mark appeared entirely absorbed. The warmth congealed into a cold dread in Sarah's stomach. It wasn't overt flirtation, but the focused energy felt amiss. Infinitesimal, perhaps, but Sarah knew her mother's playbook. Knew how she could radiate charm, making anyone feel singularly important. Throughout the night, Sarah felt tethered to their vicinity, drawn back again and again. Susan seemed magnetically drawn to Mark, inventing reasons to be near, assistance with the playlist, a top-off for her drink, playful confusion over a game. Each time, Mark's ready response chipped away at Sarah's composure. Once, recounting an amusing work story to Mark, Susan seamlessly glided into the conversation, diverting it toward a tale of her artistic pursuits. Mark, ever the polite listener, showered her with praise and questions, leaving Sarah's anecdote to wither, unspoken. The knot tightened. Was she imagining it? Was paranoia clouding her judgment? She yearned to dismiss it as simple maternal warmth, but the unease persisted, a low thrum beneath the surface noise. Later, Emily herded her towards the relative quiet of the kitchen, and Sarah finally confessed her apprehension. "Do you think, am I crazy, or are Mark and Mom acting strangely?" Emily, meticulously slicing limes, paused, her brow knitting. Strangely how? Sarah faltered, struggling to articulate the sensation. I don't know, she's just, always near him. And he seems so, responsive. Emily set down the knife with care, drying her hands. She studied Sarah, a contemplative look in her eyes. Sarah, your mom is, your mom. She thrives on attention. And Mark is remarkably easy to engage. Perhaps you're just being a tad possessive. Sarah desperately wanted to accept this explanation. But Emily's words failed to penetrate the anxiety churning within her. Maybe, she conceded, the word hollow. Emily reached out, a reassuring squeeze. Look, I'll keep an eye peeled, okay? But don't let it taint your night. It's your party, and Mark adores you. Sarah mustered a smile, but the seed of doubt had taken root. The music, the lights, the laughter, all seemed subtly muted, diminished. The almost imperceptible shifts in focus, the fleeting glances, the softening of Susan's tone whenever she addressed Mark, it all coalesced into a feeling Sarah couldn't ignore. Something had shifted. And she felt a growing sense of disquiet about it. A lingering goodbye. The last of the music faded, replaced by the clatter of glasses being gathered and the murmur of drowsy conversations. Guests, bellies full of pizza and cheap beer, began their staggered departures. Sarah, energized by the remnants of the party buzz, flitted between groups, offering hugs and promises to call soon. Mark stood awkwardly near the doorway, feeling the familiar tug of wanting to stay and the undeniable pressure to leave. He caught Sarah's eye. Thanks for inviting me, he said, trying to infuse some genuine warmth into his tone. She beamed, her smile radiant even in the dim light. Of course. Glad you could make it. You and Susan seem to be having a great time. A flicker of guilt, quickly suppressed, crossed Mark's face. Yeah, it was fun, he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. He gave her a quick, chaste hug. I should probably head out. Long day tomorrow. Okay, drive safe. Sarah called after him, already turning to help a tipsy friend find her keys. Mark shuffled towards the door, his gaze lingering on Sarah's retreating figure. He hesitated, then turned back slightly, catching Susan's eye across the room. She raised an eyebrow, a playful smirk dancing on her lips. He detoured. Leaving so soon, Mark? Susan purred, her voice a low, smoky rasp that sent a shiver down his spine. The room was nearly empty now, the air thick with the scent of stale beer and unspoken desires. Yeah, gotta be up early, he replied, suddenly finding it difficult to breathe. He noticed the way the soft light caught the highlights in her hair, the way her dress clung to her curves. He swallowed hard. Susan took a step closer, the subtle floral perfume she wore filling his senses. Such a shame. We were just getting to know each other. Her hand, soft and warm, brushed against his arm. He told himself to pull away, to offer a polite but firm goodbye, to remember Sarah, just a few feet away. But the words wouldn't come. The air crackled with an undeniable energy, a silent invitation that he found himself powerless to resist. It was, nice talking to you, he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Susan's smile widened, a predatory glint in her eyes. She leaned in close, her breath warm against his ear. I have a feeling, she murmured, her voice husky, that we'll be talking again very soon. Her gaze dropped to his lips, and for a moment, the world seemed to narrow, focusing only on the anticipation of a kiss. He could practically taste the sweetness of her lipstick, feel the softness of her skin. He leaned in slightly, the invisible thread between them tightening. A loud crash from across the room startled them both. Sarah, ever the helpful hostess, had apparently knocked over a stack of empty pizza boxes. Susan straightened up, her smile fading slightly, though the spark in her eyes remained. Drive safe, Mark, she said, her voice regaining its playful tone. He nodded dumbly, still reeling from the near kiss. He backed away slowly, his eyes fixed on Susan, a strange mixture of guilt and excitement churning within him. He turned and fled, the image of Susan's knowing smile burned into his mind. The cool night air did little to cool the heat rising within him. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that this was far from over. The first text. Mark was enduring a particularly mind-numbing lecture on macroeconomics when his phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed on the screen, likely just another spammer. He paid it no mind. Moments later, it vibrated again, a persistent little thrum. With a sigh, he discreetly retrieved it, shielding the display beneath the desk's edge. Great seeing you at Sarah's party last weekend. Hope your week is going well. Susan, a jolt shot through him, a surprising frisson tinged with something he couldn't quite place. Susan. Sarah's mom. He quickly tapped out a reply, you too. Thanks for having me. Hope you're well. He shoved the phone back, a disquieting blend of remorse and anticipation swirling within him. The professor's monotone dissolved into a distant hum. Hours later, another ping. Anything fun planned for the weekend? Mark hesitated. Weekends were usually dedicated to academics or time with Sarah. Yet, something in Susan's breezy tone sparked an urge to reply with anything that would prolong their connection. Not really. Just studying, I guess. You. Thinking about hitting that new art exhibit downtown. Heard it's pretty cool. But going solo isn't all that appealing. Mark's fingers danced over the keys. This felt like a deliberate probe, an enticing invitation. He knew it was wrong, yet the pull was undeniable. Oh yeah? What kind of art? Modern stuff. Abstract. The type that's supposed to make you think. Or at least scratch your head. The winky face sent a faint tremor through him. He typed back, a tad too eagerly, sounds interesting. Not a huge art aficionado, but always game for new experiences. Maybe we could check it out together. He held his breath, half expecting denial. If you're not too swamped with studying, of course. His pulse hammered. He knew the fallout should Sarah discover this. He envisioned her expression, a mask of hurt. However, Susan's text was a siren song, a forbidden fruit he couldn't resist sampling. I could probably juggle things around. The response arrived instantly. Great. I'll scope out the showtimes and let you know. Looking forward to it. Mark stared, the words searing themselves into his mind. Looking forward to it. He echoed the sentiment, silently. A larger wave of guilt crashed over him. He knew this was precarious, a reckless game. But the intoxicating flattery, the allure of someone like Susan, proved too strong a temptation. He squeezed his eyes shut, picturing Sarah's guileless smile, and the guilt intensified its grip. He opened them, rereading Susan's message, and the thrill resurfaced, pushing the remorse to the back, at least for the moment. Crossing the line. The bell above, the daily grind, chimed, releasing a wave of rich, roasted coffee fragrance as Mark stepped inside. He spotted Susan already settled at a small table by the window, sunlight gilding the auburn streaks in her hair. Her face lit up as she saw him, and that familiar leap in his chest occurred. Hey, he managed, a tad breathless. Hey there, she replied, a playful glint in her eyes. Nabbed us a spot. Thought you'd appreciate the sun. He settled onto the stool, its aged wood protesting with a soft groan. The cafe throbbed with midday energy, a lively hum of voices and the gentle clatter of ceramics forming a comforting backdrop. They ordered, the waitress flashing Susan a knowing look that spoke volumes. This rendezvous had solidified into a pattern. So, Susan began, her latte foam tracing delicate patterns as she stirred, how's that project of yours shaping up? Mark launched into a breakdown of the most recent coding snags, before realizing her attention was elsewhere. Her eyes traced the movement of his lips, a subtle softness taking over her features. You know, she interjected, leaning slightly closer, you get this adorable little crease between your brows when you're deep in thought. Mark's pulse quickened. Adorable? It was a new descriptor, especially coming from her. Oh, he mumbled, instinctively smoothing his forehead. Right, thanks. The conversation took a turn, becoming lighter, more intimate. Shared passions for films surfaced, long-held dreams emerged, topics deemed too vulnerable for casual company. Susan's questions were sharp, intuitive, granting Mark a sense of being truly seen, something absent with his girlfriend. You're different from the others, she murmured, her fingers toying with the edge of her cup. You actually pay attention. A wave of pride washed over him, a thrilling warmth that threatened to consume him. He wanted to tell her how unique she was, the way she invigorated him, but he choked back the words, a twist of guilt tightening his insides. As they wrapped up their meal, the cafe began to thin out. The waitress quietly removed their plates, leaving them alone in their small bubble. Susan reached across the tabletop, her hand finding his. Her skin radiated warmth, like silk. Thank you for this, she whispered, her voice laced with a husky quality. I really needed it. He met her gaze, the emerald depths swirling with an inscrutable emotion. Was it yearning? Desire? Or was he simply projecting his own forbidden feelings? He knew he should withdraw. He should invent some excuse, make his escape. But he was transfixed, held captive by her stare. Slowly, tentatively, he returned the pressure of her touch. She rose, gently urging him up with her. Leaving the cafe behind, the sunlight felt almost aggressive after the muted lighting within. Instead of heading towards their separate offices, Susan steered him in the opposite direction, down a tranquil side street adorned with antique stores. She halted before a secluded alleyway, its brick walls exuding a cool, shadowy embrace. Turning to face him, her eyes delved into his. Mark, she breathed, the sound a mere whisper against the city's drone. He remained silent, incapable of speech. The air vibrated with unspoken longing. Then, she lifted her hands, cradling his face in her palms. Her lips were tentative, a gentle brush at first, then deepening, growing more insistent. He responded on instinct, his arms circling her waist, drawing her close. The kiss was an explosion, a surge of unfiltered, electrifying bliss that vaporized reason, guilt, everything. In that solitary alley, Mark crossed the Rubicon. Guilt and secrets. Mark scrubbed at the kitchen counter, the scent of lemon cleaner doing little to cleanse the taste of guilt in his mouth. Susan's laughter, a shimmering, dangerous sound, still echoed in his ears. He'd seen Sarah off to work hours ago, promising to tackle the neglected chores, but all he'd managed to do was replay their stolen moments, each one a fresh stab of remorse. He needed to end it. Now. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over Susan's name. He imagined her voice, honeyed and expectant, and his resolve wavered. Instead, he typed out a curt message to Sarah, long day. Need to focus. Love you. A lie, layered on top of a lie. The lie tasted like ash. For the next few days, Mark threw himself into work, volunteering for extra shifts, burying himself in spreadsheets and customer complaints. He avoided Susan, dodging her calls and making excuses when she texted. Each ignored message felt like a small victory, a tiny step back from the precipice. But the silence was heavy, punctuated by the ever-present fear of discovery. Sarah noticed. The light in her eyes seemed to dim, replaced by a hesitant questioning. She would watch him across the dinner table, her brow furrowed, then quickly look away when he met her gaze. Everything all right, Mark? She asked one evening, her voice soft, tentative. He forced a smile. Yeah, just tired. Been putting in a lot of hours. She didn't seem convinced. You seem distant. And you keep checking your phone. He flinched. Just work stuff, he mumbled, pushing his plate away. The half-eaten spaghetti suddenly felt like lead in his stomach. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The rhythmic rise and fall of Mark's chest beside her offered no comfort. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. She felt it in the way he avoided her touch, in the strained quality of his voice, in the way his eyes darted around the room, never quite meeting hers. The next day, Sarah met Emily for coffee. The aroma of roasted beans did little to soothe her anxiety. "I don't know what's going on, Em," she confessed, swirling the foam of her latte. "Mark's been acting so strange. He's always been so open, but now he's secretive, almost cagey." Emily listened patiently, her expression thoughtful. "Has anything changed recently? Anything at all?" Sarah hesitated, a knot forming in her stomach. "He's been working late a lot. And he's been different since my birthday party." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" Sarah bit her lip. "I can't put my finger on it. Just distant. And he keeps his phone glued to him. I'm starting to feel like I don't even know him anymore." A tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. "I'm scared, Em. Really scared." Emily reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "We'll figure it out, Sarah. You're not alone." But even as she spoke the words of reassurance, a shadow of unease flickered in her eyes. She had seen this pattern before. She knew, perhaps better than Sarah, how quickly love could curdle into something bitter and unrecognizable. The truth revealed. Emily chewed her lip, the taste of stale coffee bitter on her tongue. Sarah deserved the truth, but delivering it felt like plunging a knife into her own heart. For weeks, a knot of unease had tightened in her stomach, fueled by subtle inconsistencies and Mark's increasingly erratic behavior. Late nights at the office, hushed phone calls taken outside, a new cologne that Sarah hadn't bought him. Each thread, insignificant on its own, wove together into a disturbing tapestry. She started small, combing through Mark's phone bill. Endless calls to a number she didn't recognize. A quick search revealed it was registered to a Susan Miller. The same last name as Sarah. Coincidence? Emily doubted it. Next, she tackled Mark's laptop. A password she didn't know stopped her at first, but a quick search for default password for laptop brand yielded results. Shame gnawed at her, but the need to protect Sarah outweighed her guilt. The laptop was a treasure trove of damning evidence. Saved emails, deleted photos recovered with a data recovery tool. Images of Mark and Susan, laughing, touching, undeniably intimate. The air in Emily's apartment grew thick and heavy, the scent of impending heartbreak almost palpable. That evening, Emily found Sarah tending her small herb garden on the balcony, the setting sun painting her skin in hues of gold and rose. She looked peaceful, oblivious. Emily felt a fresh wave of nausea. "Sarah, can we talk?" Emily asked, her voice trembling slightly. Sarah looked up, her smile warm and genuine. "Of course, Em. What's up?" Emily hesitated, her gaze fixed on a basil plant. "It's about Mark." Sarah's brow furrowed. "What about him? Is everything okay?" Emily took a deep breath. There was no gentle way to say it. "He's been seeing someone else, Sarah. Your mother." The color drained from Sarah's face. Her eyes widened, disbelief warring with dawning horror. "That's not funny, Emily." "I wish it were," Emily said, her voice barely a whisper. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through the photos. "I have proof, Sarah. I saw their messages, their pictures." Sarah snatched the phone, her hands shaking so violently that she almost dropped it. She scrolled through the images, each one a fresh wound. A sob escaped her lips, a sound so raw and broken that it tore at Emily's soul. "No," Sarah choked out, her voice thick with tears. "This can't be real. My mom. Mark." She threw the phone onto the patio table, the screen cracking on impact. Emily reached out to comfort her, but Sarah recoiled. Don't touch me, she hissed, her eyes blazing with anger and betrayal. How could you do this? How could you spy on him? On us? I did it for you, Sarah, Emily pleaded, her own eyes welling up. You deserve to know the truth. The truth? Sarah spat. The truth is that you're a jealous, meddling busybody who can't stand to see me happy. She turned and fled inside, leaving Emily alone on the balcony, the scent of basil mingling with the bitter taste of regret. The setting sun cast long, accusing shadows, and the weight of the truth settled heavily on Emily's shoulders. Shattered relationships. The forced gaiety and tinkling glassware of the Saturday garden party felt like a calculated affront as Sarah approached Mark. He was silhouetted against the rose bushes, phone glued to his ear, radiating a palpable unease like the hum of a live wire. Mark, she said, the word laced with an unintended edge. He started, his grip momentarily faltering on the phone. Sarah. Hey. Just, finishing up a call. He disconnected with unusual abruptness. Everything okay? Is it, really? Sarah shot back, her gaze unwavering. Because it certainly doesn't feel that way. She closed the distance between them, invading his personal space. The perfume of the roses, typically a source of solace, now seemed sickly sweet, almost suffocating. He fidgeted, averting his eyes. What's this about? Susan, she declared, the name hitting the humid air like a stone. And you? The color leached from Mark's face beneath his sun-kissed skin. Susan. What's she got to do with this? A tremor ran through his voice, a telltale sign of deception she'd come to recognize over years of camaraderie. Don't play coy, Mark. I know. The words hung between them, a suffocating indictment. The festive music seemed to recede, overpowered by the frantic drumbeat in her chest. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple a frantic pulse. Sarah, let me explain. Explain what, Mark? Explain how you violated my trust. How you've betrayed Susan, too. How could you do something like this? Her voice cracked on the final word, gaining volume. The garden, once a peaceful sanctuary, now felt like gilded prison. He reached for her hand, a gesture she violently rejected. Don't. Tears glistened in his eyes. It was a mistake, Sarah. A stupid, terrible mistake. It meant nothing. Meant nothing? Sarah echoed, incredulous. You think an affair with my mother means nothing? The lies, the deceit, the sheer disrespect. Before he could respond, she pivoted, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Susan by the buffet, laughing with a group of women. Sarah moved toward her, each step propelled by a frigid, simmering fury. Susan, she said, her voice a low, dangerous current. The laughter choked in Susan's throat. She turned, her smile dissolving. Sarah, darling. What is it? Don't you, darling to me, Sarah spat, her voice trembling with barely suppressed outrage. I know about you and Mark. The blood drained from Susan's features, leaving her ashen. Her mouth opened, but no sound emerged. How could you? Sarah pressed, her voice rising with each syllable. How could you do this to me? To your own daughter? The surrounding women discreetly edged away, sensing the impending explosion. Mark materialized behind Sarah, his face a mask of sheer panic. Sarah, please, he whispered, barely audible. Stay out of this, Mark, Sarah snapped, her gaze locked on Susan. This is between my mother and me. It's not what you think, Susan stammered, the excuse ringing hollow even to her. Oh, I think it's precisely what I think, Sarah countered, her voice dripping with acid. You, my own mother, betraying me with a friend. It's repulsive. It's unforgivable. I never intended to hurt you, Susan choked out, tears streaming down her face, carving tracks through her makeup. But you have, Sarah said, her voice devoid of emotion. Both of you. You've destroyed everything. She turned and walked away, abandoning Mark and Susan to their exposure, the wreckage of their relationship scattered around them like shards of a shattered mirror. The party music, formerly a cheerful accompaniment, now echoed like a funereal lament.